My name is Don Bluth. I was one of the directors on this film, Anastasia, which is done, you must notice, in a very wide screen, which was sort of our first chance to do a movie in widescreen like this, made possible because of all the wonderful technology in the computer.
I think this is one of the first CinemaScope movies.
Who are
My
you?
name is
Who
Gary,
are you?
My name is Gary Goldman, and I followed Don Bluth around to help make this picture happen. As you can tell from some of these first scenes, you see a lot of computer animation scenes that are married to the traditional animation scenes.
Do you know what I love about what we're doing right now, what I'm looking at on the screen is the camera is no longer looking down at artwork. The camera, because of the computer, is able to enter into the picture and move around. And so the sets that you see there are no longer flat. The sets, a lot of them are built so that we can move in and out and around them. One of the biggest, most exciting thing that's happened in animation in years is the computer allowing the camera to go into the artwork, which it does very well in this opening scene in the palace.
The other thing that I got very excited about was we did many crowd scenes, and in some cases up to 1,000 characters that were created with the animation of only maybe 40 characters. And it was the scene planning department, and I'm really proud of the scene planning department because we only had 4 people in that department. And this picture, including scenes that were no longer in the picture, was about 1,500 shots, which is long a lot for an animated film. I'm going to use one of our other films. Our first film only had about 950 scenes in it, a film called The Secret of Nim. But this film was one of our most intensely cut films with short scenes and.
Gary, look at this little music box. The music box is actually a CGI. It's a computer-created object that's being handled by 2D characters. And the characters were animated first, and then the little music box was laid in afterwards, so it has to feel like it isn't floating on their hands. And look at it. It's pretty solid. You did a good job.
The animators did a good job. This is interesting. We got asked to use Kirsten Dunst for the young Anastasia, and at the time we didn't know who Kirsten Dunst was. I mean, she was only about 12.
I've seen her in the vampire movie.
Yeah, and she was actually quite intimidated by the microphone because actors and actresses that work with film and they get to use everything, their body, their face, their makeup, whatever, to create the whole personality of the character. In a case of animation, they have to do it all with their voice.
Well, when you're in front of a microphone all by yourself and you have to imagine everything and just do the acting all by yourself, it's much different than being on a set with other actors and feeling the ambiance and everything that's there. So it's just come in your grubbies and be sure you act well. It's kind of hard.
Confident. Ha! You are a traitor! Get out!
Yeah, the pictures we're walking right now with Rasputin. Rasputin is definitely the villain in this piece, but we had to make this up because Rasputin really, in real life, didn't come after Anastasia. He went after the whole family, put a curse on all of them. But Rasputin in this, I think we made him, we started out making him a little bit comedic, but then we thought that's not going to work because he'll have no bite. We need him to feel like he could hurt somebody. And he goes after the little girl. And so in the opening scenes in this movie, he goes after a little girl. I mean, nothing's probably more horrific to us adults than to watch another adult chase a child.
We did a lot of research on and reading on Rasputin, and even hired consultants, people who were experts on Russian history to come in and talk to the storyboard artists and the layout artists. And I went to Russia, spent a week over there, shot about 4,000 stills of architecture and the looks of the street in St. Petersburg, and about, I think, 10 or 12 rolls of video, complete rolls of video, all around that city of St. Petersburg. And it's interesting that some of the facts that most people don't know about Rasputin, it's funny because the family itself, cousins, I believe, took it upon themselves to get rid of Rasputin because of the influence he had on Anastasia's mother. And over the brother who had hemophilia, and he seemed to be the only one that could actually stop the bleeding whenever the boy would have a situation. So the mother just really believed in Rasputin, and to the hierarchy of Russia, they saw that Rasputin was really controlling the decisions that the father made, the Tsar made, because of the influence with the mother and her influence with her husband. So the idea of him giving a pox on the family if anything happened to him was apparently it did happen. So we used it and exaggerated it. And I used to tell some of the marketing people coming that it's actually kind of humorous today. It's tragic, not tragic, but it's a murder. The cousins they put arsenic in wine. They knew that he's pretty much a debaucher, and they basically had him over to, it may have even been his own apartment. I think it was the cousin's apartment. And they tried to poison him with arsenic in the wine. He drank them under the table. So they tried to stab him. Nothing. They shot him. He was unconscious. They rolled him in a oriental rug from the apartment, rolled him up, took him outside across the street and dumped him in the river. When the autopsy was done, or any kind of, even today done, discovered the man actually died by drowning, not by the gunshot wound, not by the stab wound, and not by the arsenic. And so they thought, there's something actually magical, or almost you can't kill this guy. He was almost, sold his soul to the devil that he could get this far. So we tried to use all of that, even when you speculate about how could he survive all of that he had additional power. So we kind of pushed that edge here on this villain.
Here's our big shot, Gary. See this?
Yeah.
Going down through the city. You guys worked on this for so long.
Right, and those opening shots coming through the city, those are all two-dimensional hand-painted elements. It's not a CG picture. It's a computer-generated scene plan, but those are multiple layers of hand-painted backgrounds.
Our lives have been so great. Thank goodness for the gossip that gets us through the day. Hey!
See, here's a case where there was too many people in the kitchen cooking in this one, because a lot of this, although this is a music number we're watching, I would have grayed this down more. I would have kept the colors a little bit more
subdued,
dowdy, so they were grayed, and you felt the oppression of this world, and then gradually let the colors come up more as we made, as it developed. But most of this, you keep wanting to paint bright colors because you say, well, this is an animated piece, so stay bright. The music's bright, so. But I think Dr. Zhivago showed us something else. I mean, that was very, very depressing in many ways as you watched.
Very well orchestrated.
But right here, look at me. We're in Marketplace, and these are poverty-stricken people, and they look like they live in a palace. So, because of the colors.
There would have been a
colors
moment.
Could have been a little more somber.
He's really correct. If you took this all the way through this sequence, all the way up to the point where they leap out the window and they're sliding, then you burst into broader colors, But this whole opening.
Everything's going according to plan. All we need is the girl. Just think, Vlad, no more forging papers, no more...
Now, here's one. See the Dmitri here? This is the live-action actor who actually, he was really good at music. He was good at rhythm, and all of his choreography that he's learning here, and the way he's singing to this. He's just brilliant at it. He hops up on that windowsill, and you feel his energy. Now, the animators would not have been able to do that by their own. So our friend... Michael Tassoni, who was the actor who gave us these movements. And notice that his movements are very staccato and very quick and very energetic. They're not slow legato moves at all. He's very, very good at this, and Italian.
Lots of rehearsal, though. Lots of, exaggerated. Move it quicker than you would in real time, so that you have what we might call in animation a snap to it. It has a different energy than the way a live action movement would be, but still true to what the human movement.
Here's one of those. This is one of those big production numbers where you just thank your lucky stars that you have a computer, because you could never draw all of this. There's too many people, but they're all moving, and you can search way back there in the back row, and they're still moving. So you go, ah!
That's the other thing, is we used to draw snow or shoot live action snow and make high contrast prints of it so that we could burn it into the screen. But now with the computer, there are so many environmental phenomena that we can create and make realistic snow, and even make it swirl around by having computer snow, and then have the effects animators actually draw and create beautiful movements of, say, the wind catches it and twirls it around.
Now, this is one, the orphanage. This is, to me, where the colors start working a little bit better. It's the way the emotional colors are played. But this grayed down a little bit more. It could have gone down even more, but you're starting to feel the use of light and shadow in here, and that helps the mood.
I like these scenes in here with Andrea Martin, who's a well-known comedian. She plays the part of we called her Flemen Cough. Kind of a play on words, but sounding Russian, but also about phlegm and coughing.
That name came from the songwriters, by the way.
Yeah.
They made up that name.
Lynn Ahrens and Stephen Flaherty they're clever people, and they understand story structure very well, especially with music.
Look at the scene right here where she leaves the orphanage. We tried to play a lot of these scenes so that it's tiny girl in a big world. So there's a lot of long shot scenes where you see this tiny little figure on a big screen, sort of like the David Lean look. And that creates a feeling of loneliness, being alone, incomprehensible obstacles, nobody there to help her, no supports. And this is the one where she now is going to, she's going to go to St. Petersburg to try and find out, who she is.
Those choices are very important, whether live action or animation. How you stage your scene, whether it's a wide shot, a close-up, a down shot, an up shot, in what you're trying to say. What is the purpose of a scene? I mean, if you don't have a purpose for the scene, maybe you should cut the scene out.
Now, the snow here is interesting. This is not white. If you look at some of these backgrounds, there's lots and lots of colors in there that aren't white. There's a lot of yellows, there's a lot of lavenders, a lot of pinks, and it's all sort of put in there. And you get it, if you squint, you get kind of a feeling of, and it's very soft. You get a feeling of snow that's very soft, but there's lots of colors in there, which I think have a psychological effect on you. And then she, in the middle of the whole thing, is green, which is not an accident either. Green being, life. Green being the color that you say this is where things grow, and she's sort of that in the middle of a world that's sound asleep, which is snow.
Heart, don't fail me now. Courage, don't desert me. Don't turn back now that we're here.
And what is the dog? That seems almost gratuitous that we put this dog in here. We tried with a little dog to make that like her guardian angel. No one ever gets this. But the dog is the one who grabs the scarf and says, "Come on, you're going to St. Petersburg." And she says, "Oh, no, I couldn't do that." And the dog grabs her and makes her go there. All the way through, the dog is the one who knows what she should do. But no one seems to pick that up.
When she asks, "Give me a sign," the dog leaps into the scene.
In fact, the dog comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
She didn't have a dog at the orphanage. The dog just was hiding behind a tree somewhere. And so, it's our little mysterious guardian angel that helps her get home.
And this song and these scenes in this montage are to show that she's without family and everybody else seems to have a family.
Finally home where I belong.
This sequence is based on the song entitled "Journey to the Past." And it's really almost giving a little backstory. She doesn't have a family. Everybody else seems to have a family. Again, here you see another family working together in front of their home.
I remember what we were talking about in these days. We had some meetings with Bill, and this song is similar to, and it was written after the discussions. This song is similar to "I Have Confidence in Confidence Alone" from Sound of Music. Remember where she has to talk herself into courage to go forward? Well, that was the feeling that they wanted, and this is the song that Lynn and Stephen wrote, which is she starts out timid, doesn't know whether she can do this or not, and before she's done, she is dancing and jumping, and she's headed for St. Petersburg, and Katie barred the door, "Damn the torpedoes, I'm coming."
Back to who I was, on to find my future, things my heart still needs to know.
And see this right now where she is raising her arms? This is so musical comedy. We had huge fights over that scene because the woman that was there could not see why she was doing this. And we even had the head of the studio come in, take a look at that scene and say, I don't know what you're talking about. It's fine. But her raising her arms like musical comedy and doing that, Maureen had a problem with it. So we had big discussions over just that tiny little detail.
Dimitri, he can help. Where can I find him? At the old palace. But you didn't hear it from me.
It's interesting when you take a character like these characters here in the train station where she's trying to get a ticket to go to Paris. And they won't let her go because she doesn't have a visa to go.
So what's on the screen right now is one of my favorite parts of the movie, where we show all of these would-bes or wannabes. Here's our Tallulah Bankhead, who no way she can be that, and she can't get out of being the showbiz, though she does all the bumps and grinds to show she's Anastasia.
What I was going to say was that the more you caricature the character design, the more freedom you have with it, especially when you're using live action reference, and it will feel more like true, animation. It won't feel like you've got a ghost underneath it of live action reference. The more you go towards your straight characters, and they're the hardest, they're the most difficult, even for the best animators. A character like Anastasia or Dimitri, or especially the grandmother, where you've got to deal with lines within the shapes of the head, for instance, around the eyes. Those things can start to crawl around and distract you as the audience, and you're suddenly where you're looking at drawings again. But to me, animation, everything about it is about caricature, pushing it further, even the designs of these environments.
And
Dawn is really strong on the design of the layout and how you stage it, trying to get all the elements to point your audience to where you want them to look, including the way you light it.
This is one where the colors seem to be working for me. I mean, we can tell we're in an old world, and it's a palace that has seen better days. It's dusty, it's cobwebs, and the colors are down. We kept the whole thing. The only thing that you're seeing there, and she's the accent, it seems like. She's the accent for the entire scene, the accent in color. And but notice that we haven't really intruded. The colors aren't playing too loud here, and it feels dusty. It feels old and dead. A lot of shadows, a lot of silhouettes.
This place. It's like a
These were tough. Animators have a tough time with drawing reflections in mirrors because you're drawing everything backwards. I mean, we kind of, I enjoy the details of the movie. I mean, there are things that you can put in the scene that will not take away from the character or the point you're trying to say, but will kind of dazzle. It's like a little bit of eye candy makes it even more believable, or that it's real.
Someone holds me safe and warm. Horses prance through a silver storm. Figures dancing gracefully.
Here's the big money scene. Coming out of the spirits of her ancestors coming out of those portraits.
The room then explodes. This sequence got a lot of people, a lot of adults, a lot of women, obviously young girls and their fathers are there's a bond there. And when people, this got sent back to us a lot via email. Fans, if they met us, they brought this sequence up a lot, in that they were really actually almost moved to tears over that moment when the father comes out and dances with Anastasia in the street.
You know what you need to notice here too in this? There's a series of maybe about 25 scenes, and each one of the scenes, gradually this room is lighting up. We started with it fairly dark, and then as more and more people gather there and the family gathers, the room starts to lighten and it goes towards amber, and the lights on the walls now are on. The people are now dressed in, really costumes, and a dance is happening. The music is playing full out. And she's about to meet her father now. And look at that. Look at the room right there where that beautiful light is there. So this is really a world that is resurrected. And with color, that is really the way we orchestrate the color. has helped that happen. Now here, she's dancing with her father. So everything goes down and we spotlight only her and her father. The people in the background, just go away. They become a wallpaper.
Once upon a descent.
We'll take. You can make even a paradigm of your sequence and their titles, and say, well, this is a happy sequence, this is a scary sequence, and even then start to apply color, just a swatch on this printed thing, a diagram of what the continuity of your film is and how it's broken up, plot points and black moment in the movie, and just how it's structured, and actually place those things. Or without that, do it the physical part, which is take those storyboards and have your art director start to do little postage stamp size color ideas over. You take the story sketch and then blow it down, and then the art director will start to figure out what colors, between the directors and the art director, what colors how you want to orchestrate that film with color. What I always thought was interesting, we did a lot of research on these annual events that they would have, their anniversary events, and they, for 300 years, this annual event, the anniversary of the Romanov rule, these people used to dress in costume from 300 years before. So it was always the same every year. So it was a big deal in the opening. When you come down, it was the 300th anniversary of Romanov rule. And that's a true thing. Our only difference is our dates are different. Our child is not 8. Our child, I think what we figured out, that she wouldn't be 18 like she is in our movie. Anastasia would have been like 28 years old. So we've changed some things because we wanted her to be younger. I think in the original live-action movie she was 28. The Anna Anderson character that didn't know who she was.
I don't know my last name. I was found wandering around when I was 8 years old.
And before that, before you were 8?
Look, I know it's strange, but I don't remember. I have very few memories of my past.
That's perfect.
Well, I do have one clue, however, and that is Paris.
Paris?
Right, so can you two help me or not?
Glad, take it. Sure would like to.
I was just watching this. Kelsey for me is a lot of fun to work with. When I first met him, he was, he just said, pitch me on this. What's the story? What's the character like? And he was in a hurry, and he said, you got 5 minutes. So I told him the story of Anastasia in 5 minutes. And he says, okay, sounds good to me, I'll do it. Not that simple.
He was in a row,
He was eating a piece of raw hamburger meat when I met him. Then let's see, the thing that's always kind of, I've lamented a little bit, is the character design on him doesn't fit exactly with the character designs on the other two characters, Anastasia and Dmitri. He's a little more towards a cartoon and not as realistic as they are. I mean, if I had to do this over again, which I hope I won't have to, I think I'd push him a little bit more in their backyard, so he was more like them. He gets a little bit cartooned. It isn't as realistic as the other two, so it begins to feel like they're from different worlds. And I think we could have made him still interesting and just changed the style a little bit. The nose is particularly a cartoon.
But sure, yeah, I guess every lonely girl would hope she's a princess.
And somewhere, one little girl is.
Look at the shapes on his face. I mean, even the way the jowls go out. It's a rather, like Don said, it's less human-like and more cartoon-like. It's a real severe design compared to both Anya or Anastasia and Dmitri. They're more really based on the human figure in a normal facial structure.
But he kind of fits when he meets, his old flame. So it kind of fits. So, there's not too much to cry about. So we'll just let it be.
Kelsey Grammer, though, is a wonderful voice for animation. See, not only can he's a good actor,
sings well.
He sings well, and he's a stage actor. So you feel his projection when it fits for me that someone with those kind of a dynamic voice that is used to working theater, that's where he came from, fits better for animation. And it's an interesting voice. It's not just a flat voice. So Meg Ryan's an interesting voice. Yeah, I've heard other star females record, and they don't do anything for you. I mean, there's not anything interesting about their voice. Hank Azaria. I mean, I look at Bartok here, and he brought so much to it. He does so many voices. You know, he does a lot of the voices in Simpsons, and we saw him in La Cage aux Folles. Is that what it was, the movie version, or was that
Birdcage?
Birdcage, based on La Cage aux Folles. As the Cuban houseboy with the oversized shoes. He wore them too big because he doesn't like to wear shoes anyway. He needs lots of space in them. He was so hilarious in that he, you know, we were really attracted to what he could do, and we knew he'd done a lot of different voices. Usually you don't ask an actor to come in and put on a voice, but Hank Azaria came with that talent. He came to us and said, "This is what I think it should be."
But you know, it's hard to know where it comes from. When you're talking about creativity, I don't know where that comes from exactly, where he fished into his brain and or his life experience, and found it. But what I do find noteworthy is it was opposite of what we thought this bat should be. It was against character. The bat is small and wiry and nervous, and he took it in the other direction. So he played it against character, which proved to be funny. So he was a very laid-back bat who was very sure of himself, and why don't get too excited about it. It's okay, you know, you don't. So he went there, which we wouldn't have thought.
Lots of times, back to what I said earlier about life experiences, you know, we don't know where Hank's been. It may be an uncle of his that's from the old country, and he's got an accent like that. Maybe he's Italian, you know. But when he read that script, he saw something in somebody he's met before and brought that to the table. I'm just saying that. I don't know that for a fact. I can only imagine that it has to come from whatever his own creativity is. I mean, whenever you read a script, you start to visualize what's going on and even what kind of character it is.
Talk. Is that you?
You know, one of the things nice about Rasputin, and this is a cute gimmick, is that he's falling apart. He's rotting. And so things are coming off. His hand comes off. His eyeball comes out. We had an artist who was a storyboard artist, and he bordered a lot of things, and most of it wasn't funny, but he did come up with all this stuff about the rotting body, you know, and the eyeball popping out. And it was very, very funny. When we put it on the screen, you know, with the voice, we said, you know, you got to do that. And it's kind of funny that here's this maniacal character that he's not equipped because everything is just coming apart. And this poor little bat is trying to comfort him, you know, and trying to believe in him. And there's just not enough there to believe in you, and he's just morally totally corrupt, besides rotting in his body. So it's a funny villain.
I'm falling apart. I'm a wreck.
Actually, considering how long you've been dead, you look pretty good.
This went over really well with younger children, the Rasputin falling apart. My oldest grandson was 4 years old. This was going to be his first walk-in movie, and his mother was very concerned about the dark part of the movie. She'd never seen it, but Rasputin's in it, and he was the villain. She knew that, and it was funny. 4 years old, first indoor movie. His favorite character in the whole movie was Rasputin.
Who knew?
And I think it was this sequence where he falls apart, this song, you know, in the dark of the night. He just thought that was really, really fun.
And the last of the Roman horse will die! In the dark of the night, I was tossing and turning.
This is the number where it's a musical number, and we're trying to find things to put on the screen that might be interesting. It's Rasputin's song about what he intends to do. And we surrounded him with bugs. I couldn't think of anything else to do that, but surrounded him with these horrible little creatures that, because the villain always has something, you know, Maleficent in Sleeping Beauty had her goons. You know, they have somebody that they have to talk to, and it can't be someone of equal intellect. So we figured, well, let's have him talk to a bunch of little insects. And they represent sort of the minions that he controls, who find him tolerable.
This was very difficult for our layout team. The layout team was mostly people that understood architecture and perspective, but we were trying to get them to do something organic here. And then it took forever to find. I think Don finally did some crude sketch for them and says, more looking for something like this. I mean, not that Don would do a crude sketch, but I mean, he had plenty to do without having to design what they're going to do for me. He was hoping that they were going to come up with something different than he would do.
See all these little bugs that are on there. There's about, I think we had something like 9 or 10 different designs of bugs. So you have to when you hand the scene out to the animator, you have to say which bug is standing where, and what are they doing standing there. And we didn't shoot that live action at all. We would just simply, that's your own, just to play with, and here's the beat of the music. So just make sure they move to the beat of the music, and we have a choreography for you to follow. So I remember it was kind of a nightmare to even prepare the scene so that you labeled where the bugs were standing.
He always had to give out a pose that gave you the first frame and the last frame, so the animators knew to get their characters in those positions so it would hook up to the next scene.
You just have to talk a lot to them. You talk a lot because, and you can get them all in the room at the same time. You can talk the concept of the song and how it's to be choreographed. But even then, when they go back to the room, there's a lot of head scratching. So somewhere in there, you have to get down with the pencil in the trench with them and say, what if you did this, 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 and bounce them to the music and have their eye contact with the chief, which is Rasputin. So it becomes very specific what they're trying to do, as any director would do with a live action actor.
Oh, the mutt gets the window seat.
And this is the scene in the train booth right here in the train room where the two of them, we did record them together, and they naturally took it there.
They tuned right in.
But the script is written that way. It's written so that it is sort of, one-liners and that they're throwing them at each other. And he doesn't understand her at all. He doesn't really like her. That's what's coming on the surface. And she thinks that he's awful, too, so that you know that there is a romantic tension underneath it, because they keep putting each other down. And the referee, of course, is Vlad.
When you think about it, though, the writers and our involvement in the story as well, they hit on the male personality versus the yin and the yang here between the male and the female pretty good in this scene, about what's important to the male and what's important to the female. With her, it's about home. With him, obviously, it's about career or some achievement.
Money.
Because it's about money,
He's after money.
And I think it came off very clear, and at the same time you enjoyed that banter because you knew a romance was budding,
His arc is interesting because he starts off money, and then he as he goes on and on and on, pretty soon he turns clear around, does a whole 180, and he doesn't care about the money at all. In fact, he doesn't even take it in the end. All he cares about is her, but he doesn't tell her.
Forget it!
Fine.
Thank goodness it's you. Just please remove him from my sight.
What have you done to her?
Me? It's her.
Ha!
Oh no. An unspoken attraction?
Attraction? To that skinny little brat? Have you lost your mind?
I was only asking a simple question.
Attraction? Ridiculous.
I went crazy here. I put reflections on every window. I think it's the first time it's ever been introduced in an animated movie, so that it made you feel like you were really in that corridor going down the train and it was getting dark outside. We didn't even have the animators draw it. I just had them grab the animation that was already there, superimpose it offset over the window, create a mat around it, and let it be repeated there. And it was slightly blurred and very transparent, so you didn't know you were looking at not a reversed, reflected image. But it's funny, at things like the passports, CG and the computer guys did an awful lot of pasting up the imagery on there to make it very solid. There's a scene in the opening of the movie, and we see it again when the grandmother and Anastasia get together at the end, that we used an actual hand-painted, I think it was a watercolor image of a self-portrait by Anastasia when she was only 8 years old. And we actually extracted it from one of the books on the Romanov family of her thing and put it scanned it and actually tracked it in the imagery in the film. I was very excited about the fact that we could do that. We made a movie about Anastasia and used an artifact that Anastasia actually made.
What was that?
I don't know, but there goes the dining car.
You know, the big problem with working with CG animators is they don't know when to stop. They want to make it real. And when you're making an animated movie, especially when you're joining traditional animation with computer animation, you want it fairly flat. You know, so we insisted on an awful lot of hand-painted texture maps to go on this animation, on the character, like the train, anything that was the carriages in the opening, the cars, they all had hand-painted textures that would be applied to them so they wouldn't give some highly sheen, something that looked real plastic in a world where everything is about color and hand-painted, hand-drawn art.
But you know, having said that, if you become too aware of the art or any part of, you know, the technique that you put in here, you mar the story. So your best bet is that if you can take away all the technique and hide all of that somewhere, don't let the brush marks on the screen. You don't want the people to do that. If you're doing your job as a director, what you're going to do is you're going to hold the story up on a pedestal and you're going to say, look at this story. It's really significant. And the minute you indulge yourself in nice drawings or nice backgrounds or anything, or make that obvious, I think you've eliminated yourself. You've failed. Certainly it's hard, Blind to Walk, because you do try hard to make all the artwork beautiful and to make the characters and the acting and everything beautiful, but it can't upstage what you're trying to say. We had several background painters. Several backgrounds. I'm thinking maybe about
17.
17?
Yeah.
That many? So what they would do is they would go in and paint the backgrounds, and if two people that are on opposite sides of the room, you know, paint adjacent backgrounds in the picture, oftentimes, you know, they didn't match. And even though you had background meetings and you would lay them all out in continuity, and you'd look at them and they wouldn't match together. So there was this great moment where you could go downstairs in the compositing room after the backgrounds were in the computer, and you could tweak them all and change the colors and add light and fix anything you wanted to fix. The background artists hated that because it was no longer their background. You know, you changed the whole thing. And I used to go down there. That was my favorite hobby, to go down there and sit in there, and where the backgrounds were well done. They had painted them beautifully, but they really weren't matching, and let's say they were too colorful or they were not spotlit correctly. You could go down there and relight them so that...
We had two very good compositors that could just, they would pull sections for Don, and he'd say, okay, I want that section there, I want to light it up more because that's where I want the audience to look.
Because if you really say, okay, well, that background doesn't work, and so take it back to the background department and have them fix it, that's really hard to do and it takes a lot of time. And so you can't do it. It'll cost you too much money. But in the computer, you can go down there and relight, change it, change the colors, change the whole look of it. You can make it feel more realistic or more fantasy by, you know, what you get that computer to do. It's wonderful, wonderful opportunity. And all of these things down in Purgatory, where Rasputin lives, all of those were tweaked beyond belief. I took them way, way, way down there and darkened everything and just highlit the little places where Rasputin was going to be.
You're right. It's very upsetting, sir. I guess this reliquary's broken.
There's one particular thing that comes to mind, which is this little magical object, which we call the reliquary, that the little bat has in his possession. It was something that Rasputin had taken. It was Rasputin's power, the symbol of his power. And everyone was afraid to say the name reliquary. And so we went through most of the picture, and you need to hunt really, really hard in the picture to find someone put a label on that object. They would not put a label on it. You know, everyone said, well, can't we just say to the audience what this is?
It's actually a religious thing. A reliquary is used by priests. It's to keep certain incenses in.
Well, we tried really hard, and then we said we just kept referring to it as that thing or not or anything. And in the movie, it's even, you know, we dodge about and hop about this whole business. And eventually, I think there's one little place that we squeaked it in there when no one was looking.
Bartok says it.
Yeah. Finally, at the end, when the thing was all over, someone says, well, what is that thing? And he says, well, gee, we should have said a long time ago, but why don't we say so? And so we finally put it in there.
Are we gonna walk to Paris?
We'll take a boat in Germany.
Oh, then we're walking to Germany.
No, Your Grace. We're taking a bus.
A bus. That's nice.
Sophie, my dear, Vladdy's on his way.
Who's Sophie?
Who is Sophie? She's a tender little morsel, a cup of hot chocolate after a long walk in the snow.
Vlad, ixnay on the officer.
She's a decadent.
See this little part right now that we're talking about? This is the part where it's on the bridge, and he reveals to her that he's taking her, and to the grandmother, and exactly what they're going to do. And she says she's objecting to it. Background-wise, these backgrounds were so hard because they are so filled with so many colors and everything. So what I did down in that compositing room was take the background way off there in the distance and lighten it, and then darken everything in the foreground and play them silhouette against the lighter parts. But there was a lot of same colors going on the way this was originally conceived, and it became hard to watch. You didn't know what to look at. So I did a lot of correcting in this one, which allowed it to be a little bit better because there's a lot of shadows. So a lot of the shadows that are across the road, those were all placed in there later. They weren't painted in.
Look, watch Vladimir through this whole sequence. He's all caught up in the romance of what they're going to do. And Dimitri's focused on what it's all about, and he doesn't want her derailed. And it's Vladimir who kind of turns the...
There's a lack of... There was in the backgrounds, it bothered me for a while, there was a lack of the feeling of light, morning light, that beautiful morning light that wasn't in there. But I did find that with the computer, you could get that in there. Whereas with paint, on an illustration board, sometimes it just didn't work, it felt dead. And there's lots of things in this sequence that we just plain tweaked. The one here in the bridge where she's standing next to Vlad, darkening all that wood behind them so that they play light over dark. And the dog is ever present, monitoring everything that goes on here. He seems to know. But there's one right there, this scene where she's trying to decide whether to go along with this or not. She could have been darker there.
Gentlemen, start your teaching.
I remember it well.
You were born.
There's a consistency you can get when one artist is kind of controlling it, all right? Not all the background artists understand the term sfumato, things that are in the distance that are there's a haze to it. And what the morning light that Don's talking about, if you've ever experienced it in a forest or in an area where you have atmosphere in the air, that they can't all achieve it. They're not all experts at using what we like to paint with a badger brush.
What if they had painted those trees, for example, back in the background, in focus? So what we could do after they've done that is you don't have to go back and make them feel bad about that, but you can go down there and you can isolate that part of the background and take it out of focus, and you can pump more light into it to where it's lit. It feels more lit. Because, light in the computer is light. When you're looking at paint on paper, that's just paint on paper. And so you need contrast. You need contrasts to make the light work. Light works really well in places where there's a lot of shadows. But if you don't paint in the shadows, then, you can get really flat looking.
I can learn to do it. You can learn to do it. Hold yourself together, and you'll pull through it. Tell yourself it's
We tried to do as much as we could. This is a very fun song. Very fast-paced and full of information. This is the transformation. This is filling her head with all that information that they wanted her to memorize. And I just watched this again last night and this morning. And when this song came on, I remembered just how fast-paced it is. And when you watch it with the song, it feels even faster than it does with the cutting we've done here. But we did some interesting things with the spinning of the backgrounds, and that was, that was basically a trick we did in the computer. We actually
The songwriters did something in this. This song goes along, and they're talking about the Romanovs, what they were like and everything. In this song, there's one little clue that she is really the princess. And that's songwriters, that's their craft, because they're saying, we're not just going to sing you a song. We're going to drop a little bit of information here that if you pick it up, you realize that she shouldn't have known that.
And you catch it if Dimitri reacts.
I don't think I told her that.
Here, I bought you a dress.
You bought me a tent.
What are you looking for?
The Russian circus. I think it's still in here.
Come on, just put it on.
Checkmate.
This is one of my favorite scenes here where he dances with her on the deck of the boat. And I think it's kind of fun because this is the first place that the audience says, hey, Dimitri let his guard down. And Dimitri actually,
Shows
you
how
can
he
tell
feels.
that he does care about her, that something's happening romantically between them.
And the
And
lyrics.
she's in control. She's in control of the scene, and he is not. And Vlad, of course, this is where we see Kelsey really show his talent as a singer.
Dress is really beautiful.
Because I think he's just a perfect backdrop for this. And one of the things I love in animation, I always have, is the movement of drapery. And so we paid a lot of attention to the dress that she was going to wear here, and particularly the twirl of it. You know, when it twirls, when the skirt goes out, and you know what it does when it wraps around her and everything. So there's a lot of really kind of beautiful stuff that we watch with the drapery. And I think that's one of the things that in women's costumes that's so fun to watch, the way the cloth moves. Now right here, look at this. See that? That drapery when the skirt goes out and then twists and then recovers. And it makes you watch her, not him. You know, he's kind of guiding the thing around, but she becomes the focus.
It's those kinds of details that actually make the scene, make the fact that this isn't really happening more plausible, more believable.
This is one of those
He's
places
adding.
also where we're changing, the sunset is getting darker with each scene. So the lighting is changing from scene to scene as we went through here. We could only have done that down on the computer in compositing. Yeah, because you couldn't ask the background artists to paint that with each background consecutively a little darker and a little darker. But in the computer, you can do that because it can keep track of it, and you can look at the scene you're just coming from and darken the one you're working on.
The thing for me that worked so well was is the acting that Kelsey did in the song. I actually get choked up during the song.
You're doing fine.
Here you go. Here's the map. I was thrilled with what the CG guys did with that boat, creating the look of the boat, and it was all, again, hand-painted tiles that they put on the side of the boat, so it didn't feel so computer generated.
Just riddled with envy. Look at him. He can slip through anything.
This room inside the cabin of the boat, this was a big deal. We tried to build this room. We didn't build too many sets, you know. It was too early in the animation technology, but this room we tried to build
As a computer
as a
environment.
computer room. You always want to get the camera into the action, and then we could move around the room, and the boat would be rocking because there's going to be a storm. And so we thought we'd get a lot more dramatic energy out of it if we let this room move instead of just have a flat background. So you see it actually changing perspective.
This was later in production too, and I think their drawing got better as they got more familiar with the characters.
Yeah, it did.
You're looking at your schedule like this, and it's going across. Well, the graph for your schedule ends up going way down here, because they're not big, huge. You know, you're trying to get your 140 feet, you know, a minute and a half a week, and you're going, we're never going to get done. And finally, in the final stages, the last 3 months of the movie, these guys are doing 200 and 300 feet. They're doing like 4 minutes a week. You know, and it's consistent. Apparently, it's the same thing in CG. They end up with the same issue where they're just familiarizing themselves and they can't make their quotas, and then all of a sudden everything comes together. People are familiar with what to do, and then you want to go back and fix the first things because they weren't as nice as the things you did later, and you just have to let it go. You have to depend on your story to carry you.
This is interesting. Rasputin is trying to have an influence over her. This was visually what we were up against. Have an influence over her mind. And she's asleep in a cabin on a boat, and Rasputin isn't there. So how does he get her to go out on the deck of the boat in a storm and stand on the edge of the boat and, you know, jump in the water? So what we came up with was these strange little green spirit-like things that are like wisps of smoke that come down and kind of surround her and envelop her. So it's like she's in a trance of some kind, and she's being possessed. So that was our thought in doing it. And the symbol, of course, is that green stuff or mist that sort of leads her along or envelops her. The design is very interesting because she's in a very happy world. Look at it, it's the golden, it's the beautiful sunshine again. She's out on a wonderful meadow, and her little brother's with her, and her sisters are with her. The family's there. It's idyllic, is what it is. And that is what's in her head. That's what she thinks she's doing. In reality, what she's doing is going out on the boat and going to fling herself in the sea. So she's about to kill herself.
Anya! Anya!
What's interesting too is we did a lot of research on and got photos of the family doing family outing things. Those costumes, those bathing suits are accurate. The outfit she's wearing and the little sailor suit that the boy is wearing is back according to photographs that we saw. So we did a lot of research to try and see. They did a lot of vacationing together. The family did, and one of the things we discovered was the father had given Nicholas had given all the children cameras. They were always taking family photos. But Anastasia was more creative than us. She used to try to color all of her photos with dyes.
See, we have to reveal to the audience here the father who was beckoning her to jump in the water with them actually turns out to be, you know, a more demonic figure. So you see it for what it is. And this is the moment when he's actually touching her here. He's trying to save her, but he's touching her, and so touch is the beginning of the romance. You know, it's no longer just looking in theory. He's actually touching her. And now she's got her head right in his chest, and now he's going to put his arms around her and hold her. Gee, we're there.
This is the moment that he was talking about earlier with
Bruce. Graham came up with
Graham
the idea.
had suggested when they touch, it changes the story.
This is fun for me, the Rasputin scene where Rasputin is so frustrated that he keeps banging his head. He grabs himself and throws his head on the wall. He's such an idiot.
And then he goes all the way down into his own costume.
Heartless. I have no feelings whatsoever.
Sir?
I feel a sudden onset of clarity, Bartok.
Now he's into his own rib cage. Again, this is something that gets a big laugh. It's dark, but it does get a big laugh.
Well, it's not straight. You know, it's not the thing that you expect all the time. And in live action, a character can't do these things.
I have so many fond memories of Paris. Killing the last Romanos with my own hands will be so delicious. Well, time to go.
But you're dead! You're falling apart, sir. How do you expect to get to Paris in one piece?
I thought we'd take the train.
Now, we haven't seen the grandmother in a long time in this movie. She's been gone. But now she re-enters the film in this little moment in Paris, and she's decided, it's kind of ironic, that she's decided that she will see no more supposed Anastasias. It's all over. Just when they arrive, after all their troubles to get there, this woman's decided, I'll see no more. So it's kind of a neat twist in the plot.
And Angela Lansbury is a great voice, just a great voice. Not only can she sing, but there's just something about the texture of her voice that she was very good in Beauty and the Beast as Mrs. Potts. Great voice. Again, like Kelsey Grammer, I mean, she's a stage person and really understands musical comedy and how to sing.
I will see no more girls claiming to be Anastasia.
Where was Uncle Boris from?
What if Sophie doesn't recognize me?
She will. You're Anastasia.
It's just that,
What?
well, 3 days ago I didn't have any past at all, and now I'm trying to remember an entire lifetime.
That's why you got me. Now, where was Uncle Boris from?
Moscow?
Oui, monsieur?
Sophie!
Bernadette wasn't particularly pleased with her character design. She didn't want to be quite that.
Bernadette is my age, okay, and I think she was like 51, but I was in New York when we did these numbers. This girl looked like she was in her 30s and had become like a workout queen. I mean, she was just really in great shape. I mean, her arms, everything about her. She was a person that probably worked out 3 to 5 days a week. But when she came in, what a wonderful lady she was, and she just, hello to everybody and got behind that microphone and gave her a brilliant performance, She had done all of her rehearsing, did everything. Not her voice recording. There's 2 days. I mean, she did her songs in a day. Because she has the big number she does.
The Paris number?
Yeah, the Paris number. We did that in a day, but we didn't record the voices. Didn't she come to L.A. and do her voices there?
Yeah, she did come to L.A., but it didn't take long. She doesn't have that many lines, really. And she knew the character fairly well, so she already had that worked out. And once the actor's done their homework, you just, you can do it in no time at all.
It reminds me of Kelsey, because Kelsey would come in, and when Kelsey decided that he was done, he was done. Obviously had another appointment, but I mean, you'd be lucky if you got a full hour out of him, but he would get a lot done in that hour. I mean, he would focus on what the essence of what the purpose of those scenes were and what he was going to deliver.
It's just them and the mic. If they had another actor there, it would take longer.
So, is she a Romanov?
Oh, well,
Well, I don't know why Bernadette would complain. She's very well endowed.
This is one of the nice scenes to me. This is where finally Dmitri realizes that she is really Anastasia, and it's not just some counterfeit they're trying to pass off, because he knows something, she knows something that he knows, and no one else could have known that. That was the little boy that helped her out of the room in the beginning. And when he knows this, it changes everything. He no longer is the same guy. This is the moment in the movie where he says, uh-oh, no, we're not playing around here. This is really her, which means we have to change our plan.
Those framed photos that are on the tops of the wall units back there, those are we've scanned them out of Romanov, history books. So the Tsar's in those photos, Alexandria's in those photos. I love this too. We were making an attempt to see the light going through the trees and giving a dappled look here, and we tried to get it across, and it works. It's a little stiff, but some scenes works better than others. But even the crew was gasping when the scenes came on because they became so dimensional. This is a great scene.
This is a nice moment here. She
transitioned
into this costume. It's a little too fast. Wish we had taken more time to do it.
Well, hindsight.
Got a lot of that.
Yeah.
welcome, my friends, to Paris. Here, have a flower on me.
One of the exciting things is that historically what was going on is Russia was dying. Our story takes place in 1927. Russia was dying, and Europe was coming to life. And Paris was the epicenter of that life.
Of the
and
arts
that's where
as well.
everything was going on. Styles were changing. All of the great writers were there. They were all meeting there. This is where the center of activity was. And they were going there. And to actually put her in the middle of this environment without making a comment about the new world she was going to. She left a dead world and went to a new living world. So we have to go there and we have to talk about it just a little bit. And all the people that are there.
And that's supposed to be Freud. He slips on the banana peel. This is obviously Charles Lemberg, Josephine Baker. Monet is painting.
And this became such a, I think it's symbolic of what was happening to her because her world was actually coming to life. She went to a world that was filled with light. And so we had to take this. And so we said, let's do it in a musical number. And so that's when our two composers got together and said, okay, let's write something. They wrote something that was just really clever, and so we said, that's it.
You can too.
This part here where Anya is asked to dance by everybody, it chokes me up when he holds up the glass and he declares that he's really found the real person. There's nothing, he's not meant for her, and he sees her reflection dancing in the champagne.
Well, he knows
glass.
he's lost her.
Yeah.
And he hasn't told anybody what he knows yet. He hasn't told Vlad, his partner in crime.
A lot of these personalities that were in Paris at the time, we tried to include. Isadora Duncan running across the screen there, Rodin doing a statue. Here's Gertrude Stein riding in a convertible car. You'll see an airplane, the Spirit of St. Louis, which is piloted by Charles Lindbergh. So, and you saw at the beginning of that sequence other characters that were famous at the time that were living and working in Paris. It's a real celebratory moment. Like Don said earlier, it's the blossoming of our character Anastasia becoming who she really is. This is the Paris Opera House. Very accurate, by the way. The layout crew really studied the streets of Paris, and right there where all those streets come together, and it is a real grand, if you look down one of the streets looking at the Opera House, I mean, anybody that's been in Paris and been anywhere near the Opera House will recognize that when on that one aerial shot coming in.
She's the real thing, Vlad.
That means our Anya.
This is that moment of truth between these two people when he's told Vlad that's her, and Vlad finally gets it. It is her. And, what are they going to do? And he says, I'm just going to go through with it. I'm going to try and introduce her to her grandmother. And at this point, you haven't been told yet, but it isn't about the money right now. It's about delivering this girl. He really does care for her.
What he's telling Vlad, though, is he's going to slip out of her life because she outclasses him.
And he's nobody.
So he knows his place.
He's the kitchen boy.
How beautiful you look.
Well, thank you.
Well, ever since there was an Audrey Hepburn, everyone has been absolutely infatuated with her charm, her looks, her beauty, everything about her. And so there's a way, if you look at the face, there's a perfect face that she seemed to have that was appealing to everyone. And it isn't limited to just women. Men have it also. Tom Cruise has it. It's the way the face is structured. And so what we did is Sleeping Beauties was also designed after the Audrey Hepburn face.
There she is.
And it's the way the eyes, the almond-shaped eyes that are shaped upwards. We lost it a little bit. The eyes are not really that wonderful eye that's Audrey Hepburn, the way we've done it here, but it was our intent. It's just that we have too many animators that didn't know who Audrey Hepburn was. So, but I guess you go there because it's just so idyllic and it's so beautiful to look at.
She had a very long neck.
I always like the jewelry we got on her too in some of these scenes. A little bit of Cinderella there, which is this is a Cinderella story too.
Come on. Guess it's time. Relax.
This is a powerful moment in the movie where she finds out what Dimitri is all about because she eavesdrops and hears, and boy, is she mad. So she lets him have it. And that's where these two split apart.
The tip-off is the fact that the grandmother says out loud that what you're really after is the 10 million ruble reward. That's when she realizes it's all about money. It's not about reuniting her with the grandmother.
But everything keeps changing. All the characters in this movie, this is probably why it's a good script, they're all out of sync with each other. Anastasia comes into town and the grandmother's just vowed she'll see no one else. Dimitri finds out she's the real princess, and she finds when he finds out that, he's done with her. He wants to really get her home, and that's when she finds out that he's really, really a con man. So everybody's out of sync. No one's learning the information all at the same time, so they can all get on with their lives, and it causes the dramatic thing that's going on in the movie. Everyone's at a different place at a different time.
And even when he discovers it, Vlad's now, the fact that she's the real girl, Vlad's really excited because we're in now. We're going to get the money, you know. He's going to be an aristocrat again, you know, so. And it isn't until the opera house scene on the steps that Vlad is brought into it, and then suddenly his own morality is involved. He's got to almost agree with what Dmitri's going to do.
I'll see you to the door. Come now. Come to the door.
Your Majesty, I intend you no harm. My name is Dmitri. I used to work at the palace.
Well, that's one I haven't heard, I must say.
Wait!
I always liked this scene because no matter what he told her, she wasn't going to accept it, even though he told her something that, when he says, I was the boy that opened the door. And she's saying, well, you could have got that information anywhere, when really he couldn't have.
Well, he has a reputation, and that's what she's buying into.
She
There's
knew,
too
she had
many
heard
rumors
that
about
he
him.
was training actresses, looking for an actress to bring her to. I mean, she obviously had feelers out there, and people reporting to her about what was going on, because she was getting an awful lot of people coming in.
The marvelous part about, I think, the scene that Dmitri, I really like him, what he's turned into, because now he's not fighting for the money. He's actually fighting to get the two back together again, mainly because he loves the girl. So he wants her to find her home again. And he's fighting odds now, see, because the grandmother won't let him in, and now Anastasia's turning against him, so he's on the outside. And he still doesn't give up. In the scenes that are coming up, he will now go to the grandmother, and he will trap her, and he'll say, you've got to talk to her, and he'll make her go in and talk to her. And then he'll turn around as soon as it's all resolved and walk out of both their lives. Having no money, having nothing, all he did was just at least saw it to its finish.
From the very beginning, you lied. And I not only believed you, I actually...
He doesn't care about himself right now. He's fighting for her. And he'll get those two women together and make sure that they reconcile. And then that's it for him. That's all he wants out of it.
You just leave me alone.
Anya, please, you have to know the truth!
If it's weird, but the way that the structure actually ended up, and each of these kind of scenes right here, that as they unfolded, if you've got any emotional sensitivity in you, man or female, you can't help. There's like 6 moments that it'll hit you. That it just, and even though it's our film and we were so familiar with it, even when we sat in the theater in New York watching the premiere, I still got hit by those moments, you know, as crude as animation can be. This story poked through the shortcomings of whatever we could do artistically. The score for Anastasia was composed by David Newman. Oh, and he brought in something. What was it? Was there not 100? How many choirs? Didn't he have 100 choir members? Up against. Remember, we were in the recording booth and their backs were to us, but he had them in there with the orchestra play. So he used them as almost like orchestra members. We had one other experience like that back on American Tail, I think, with James Horner, where he brought the choir members into the room with a 100-member orchestra. They were all crowded in the room at the same time, and he basically treated them as they were part of the orchestra. Oh, by the way, David Newman would call us and was going to play something for us, and the technology that Fox had set up melded very well. David was very technical as well, and even without an assistant there, he would set everything up, and he could actually send us the music and we would turn our projector on and sync it with the projection in our studio in Phoenix, and he would be sending it from his studio in Malibu. And it wouldn't be the final orchestra, it would be a synthesized orchestra of what he thought, what instruments he would be using, and what he was trying to. He was going as deep into the thought of what the music would sound like and what it would do to the person listening to it, and how it would augment what we're trying to get across in the scenes, and take our criticism right there on the phone. We'd have a speaker there, and we would watch on the big screen in our theater in Phoenix. sync to his new music, and it was a brilliant experience. I mean, we'd never had that kind of high-tech experience where we didn't sit in the room with the composer and review the stuff.
This is just a little sideline, but the music was recorded in the Sony studios, which used to be the old MGM studios. And the room that we recorded in, it looked like the inside of an unfinished garage. It was a great big room, but it was the same room where they recorded Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Which I thought, wow. I used to sit in there and listen to this recording, and I said, this is the room. They hadn't changed the walls. Nothing. The whole thing was just the same wonderful element.
They did the same thing over at Fox, and David Newman's father, Alfred Newman, wrote the fanfare for Fox. And as we finished this movie, or maybe even it was even in the next film, he redid the fanfare. He reorchestrated the fanfare, David Newman, the son of the man that wrote the music. And they did the same thing at Fox. They'd remodeled their recording stage for music, didn't change anything in the walls or anything because the acoustics in the Fox, and both Fox and Sony stage, the MGM stage, were both well known for being one of the best places to record your music.
They sure don't look very good, but they really sound good.
Hear this song and remember, soon you'll be home with me. Once upon a December.
In fact, I think the hardest thing to animate is this hug here that they're going to do, because it's never going to look right. I think it's because how do you get the expression on the face? Look at the grandmother's face right there. How do you get an expression that says really what they're feeling? That's a hard emotion to draw. Draw an emotion where the grandmother is saying, oh, we're together again, you know. Draw that? You know, so, you know, it's always going to feel a little forced.
That scene that was just on there, too, with Dmitri turning and walking down that alley alone, away from the car, away from everything, and he's just alone. You know, it says he's done the job, and he's sort of a hero there for me. It's like doing something for somebody, not expecting anything back, not expecting a thank you.
Well, he redeemed himself.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He redeemed himself with that act. Whereas if you didn't like him before, you do now.
To me, this is one of the funniest sections with him because he wants to go party. And he says, we're going to kill her. He said, well, wait, what about the party? And I think the animator on it was John Hill, and he really had a handle on the character Bartok. He was the lead animator for that character.
I remember now.
See, there's a scene on there right now where she's sitting next to her grandmother, and they're kind of wallowing in it. We're related. We're
reminiscing.
family. This is a really hard scene because there's not a lot of drive in the scene to keep it going. To me, this scene, you're saying
very slow.
What the only thing that we could do here is would say, here's the crown that you should have worn, and this is what you should, and that's what we have to get to as quickly as possible because I'm not sure what this scene is really trying to say, except that all is well, we're together again. There's no conflict.
Well, I think the conflict is as they get chummy, what's going on with Dmitri? The audience is asking the question, now, what about Dmitri? I think that's how it works.
But the scene itself here, everyone's pretty happy.
Oh, yeah. But, I mean, as
that's,
they're happy, you're going, okay, well, Dmitri, what about he walked off into the darkness? What's happening with him? Because you like him now. He redeemed himself. What's happening to him? And now we go to it. It always bothered me. How do you get 10 million rubles in paper in that one little box?
As promised, with my gratitude.
I accept your gratitude, Your Highness. But I don't want the money.
What do you want, then?
Unfortunately, nothing you can give.
Dmitri, the voice was John Cusack. John, we presented the whole story to him. He was in a rehearsal for something else. We did it in probably about 5-10 minutes, and John says, yep, count me in, I'll do it. He was terrific. The grandmama was Angela Lansbury, who was probably the best choice we could have made.
Yet you want no reward.
Not anymore.
Why the change of mind?
It was more a change of heart. I must go.
Now, this scene on the steps, where they meet on the steps, you like Dimitri, and she's not behaving very well.
Hello.
Did you collect your reward?
Which I think is really sort of the neat thing, because it puts her at a disadvantage. She doesn't have all the facts. She can't make a good judgment. She thinks that he really is just a con man. And he just did a really...
heroic thing, actually.
Yeah, it was...
Yes, I'm glad
He
you
turned down the money and walked out of her life and everything.
Well then, goodbye, Your Highness.
And that's an emotional beat there when he doesn't say what he just did. He's just so
Well, you wouldn't like him
generous.
if he did.
Yeah.
Said, I didn't take the money. You know, you wouldn't like him. The fact that he just was silent, I think, shows greater strength of character.
Ooh. Do you mind? No, of course not. You're a wonderful dog.
Well, if you're ever in St. Petersburg again, look me up. So long, Vlad.
My boy. You're making a mistake.
Trust me. This is the one thing I'm doing right.
This is cool too. The dog finally warms up to Dimitri.
So long, Mutt. I can't stay. I don't belong here.
The audience, we as humans, when we look at a human move, we can tell whether it's real or not. And if you try and animate something and the movements are really not in tune, we'll say, to human movement, you know it like that.
If there's only a few human scenes in it, you could get away without it because you have some really good animators that really can handle human and moving around. This picture had humans everywhere, and we had 25 or 27 animators. 5 of them very experienced. The rest of them were growing at different stages. They needed the aid of reference to actually get them through the bulk of what we had to do. I can name you a couple of movies. In fact, most of Snow White, live-action reference. Pinocchio, live-action reference. Cinderella, completely shot in live-action before they made the movie in animation. Alice in Wonderland. Some of the top animators, Mark Davis and John Lounsbury, even Milk Hall, didn't actually use the stats, but he used to study it. You know, he'd study with he'd take the actress's, the voice of the actress, the actual actress, and go look at some movies she's done and watch her mannerisms and imitate those. Melt was a master animator. I mean, they all were. I mean, the top 7
Now,
or 9
here's an
guys.
interesting scene right here. They're sort of behind a curtain, which is symbolic of the fact that she is not yet revealed as the princess, and there's a life waiting for her on the other side of that curtain. And if she parts that curtain and goes out there, now here she parts it and the light is on her. Now, shall I go out there and be the princess or not? He didn't take the money. She closes the curtain and the light is off her again. So there was just a moment where she might have gone out there and accepted it, but pulled back.
Notice that Pook
So
is-
that's very symbolic. That's a symbolic kind of a moment. We consciously did that. Let the light shine on her, let her reject it, go back inside the darkness. I think all of us live our lives that way. We're in shadow or we're in light, which means we're either in darkness, ignorance, or we're intelligent, or we're in light and we're aware of what's going on. So shadows and light to me are symbolic of you're aware of your situation. So if I pull somebody back into shadows, that means, you know, they're not out in the bright light of truth. So you pull them back into shadows, and if you put them right out on the light, light usually is associated with truth. So you can do it that way. Now, right now we're going into a place which is very dark, which is, you know, she's going to have a confrontation
And
with
she doesn't know what's
Rasputin. And so the lights here are way down, and turning gradually green, which is Rasputin's key color in the movie. Those little minions are green. And her dress has sort of got a green hue about it. The bridge is kind of greenish. You'll see more and more green as you go into this sequence. The stones are greenish.
Look what 10 years has done to us.
Here it's not. Green is a very, very odd color. We love green, when it's in grass and bushes and things which indicate life. We're very relaxed around it. Psychologically, it's very comforting to us. I don't think blue bushes are very comforting. But there are really ugly shades of green, and they have a lot of brown in them. Notice the green that he's wearing is not a pleasant green. It's an olive drab. And the bricks and everything, it's not the same green, and all greens aren't alike. So as you watch this, you'll find those sick kind of brown greens that are not pleasant to look on.
Oh, you're on your own, sir. This can only end in tears. Oh.
I'm not afraid of you.
I can fix that. Care for a little swim under the ice? Say your prayers, Anastasia! No one can save you!
Want to bet?
Usually, traditionally, is the villain and the hero have to have a confrontation. We couldn't just let Rasputin snivel away, whimper away, and say, well, I lost. She has to actually destroy him.
And you actually want to take it to the point where you think they're not going to succeed.
It's really a touchy thing. It's a slippery slope here, because if she destroys him, what kind of person does that make her? So you have to justify that she is actually fighting for what is right, and she's saving her own life and all that kind of thing. Somehow Dmitri gets in the middle of this. Now, Dmitri saving the girl, that sounded a cliche, and most women would not appreciate that, have to be rescued. So we labored with those kind of things.
Das Vidanya, Your Highness.
Here's Dmitri, ready to fight for her, but he can't. She has to solve her demons. So whatever she does, we knew that somewhere in here, she's the one that has to stand up to this demon Rasputin and put him down.
It's her story, and she's the heroine of this movie, so she does have to be the one that solves the problem in the end. I mean, the only reason Dimitri's there now is for her to see how much he really does care for her, and actually continues the redemption, his redemption, and reunites them.
What stimulates in her now into actually doing this is Dmitri gets hurt. Now, what that does is flip a switch inside of her, because I care about him. He's like important to me. He's family to me. And so she's ready now to fight for him. Now I can justify her being violent. And so she's ready now. So she stomps on the reliquary.
Which will actually kill.
Which is his power. So she doesn't have to do any shooting or stabbing or kicking or hitting with a board or anything like that.
This is for my family.
Those were discussions too. What would her fight be? What would be what's his Achilles heel? And that obviously is the reliquary. But how far do you take her in this battle? I mean, like Don says, does she hit him with a board? I mean, how violent is she going to become?
This could have been so much better, I think, where he turns in. We were running out of money and time here. So, where he turns into the cloud of dust and is blown away, could have made that much more fun. Right now, it's just sort of like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, dust gone. And I think we could have had a little more poetry in it. It got shortchanged.
I like the bungling between them. He gets up, she hits him, and she'd done that before. In that sequence in the forest, where Vladimir's all excited about they're on their way, and he's being very romantic just before they do the Pygmalion sequence, or the teaching sequence.
I thought you were going to St.
I was.
This is the scene of unfinished sentences. You mean you were? Yes. What? Yeah, I couldn't. Why? Because? Oh, is that, when did you? Yesterday.
They're reading each other's minds.
So it says they're on the same page.
and the decision, what are you going to do?
They're waiting for you.
Our Anya was voiced by Meg Ryan, which was, I think, our best casting. You know, because Meg brought to it something that was just absolutely fabulous. So she was the voice. Then the live action part was done by a young girl named Anna Braga.
And there was another one by the name of Jennifer Jarris and Christine Klein.
Okay, and Anna was, we did rehearsals. We actually got, where we did auditions, and Anna was probably the first one. She just stood out in the whole crowd. So Anna was just really great at it. She seemed to be a natural at it. That was good.
No, it's a perfect beginning.
I would have, in hindsight, I would have played this scene in silhouette, so it wasn't bright colors. I'd played them darker colors against a lighter city. That would have, I think, been more dramatic. Right here, see, they're playing light over dark.
Yeah.
It would have been better if they were dark over light. I think it's the matter is that goes back to that psychology of color again. I think what happens is you add mystery and romance if you bring in the moonlight, you know, and let the characters play as silhouette in the moonlight. In darker characters, the imagination has to fill in the blanks. And the imagination is stronger than when we can draw. The minute you light it all up, it shows all of its flaws. So I would rather play things, if you want, for mystery and romance, go darker.
Hello.
Dark is actually more interesting when you can't really see everything, you know, and like Don says, your imagination, you fill in the blanks, and can be scarier than it really looks because you don't know what's there.
You really have to think it through. The frustration to me is that when you have so many people working on a picture, let's say that there are key pin people, there's something like maybe 25, 30 people who all are really in the creative part of it. A lot of people are following through and everything, but there's that many in the creative part. Sometimes things just go skipping right in and suddenly they're in the mailbox and on their way before you get a chance to do anything, you know, about it. And you need time, I think with creativity, you need time to write it, put it aside, go away from it a little bit, come back to it, take a look at it, and see if you still feel the same way. And it can't be as simple as all logical. You know, it's about feelings, and all art is. And as long as you are approaching it like a checklist of things to do, the art goes out the window. So I would rather be dependent on the feelings that you have while you're making it. And with a groupie, it's a little hard. Sometimes things get away from you before you actually have a time to birth them.
And you're on a schedule. You're running crazy trying to hang on to the vision and keep it moving forward, you know, and you know that every day it's one less day to go.
The accountants are there
like life,
with their abacus every second, you know. When, you know.
And they get real nervous when they see you're behind schedule. You know, and it takes. Luckily, in our case, we had two production managers on board that had been through several films with us, and they would be the ones that would be able to go argue in the meetings downstairs with the bean counters about the fact that this happens in every movie. Don't worry about it. We will finish on time, and we will finish on budget unless you have a lot more changes to make, but. It's just every movie has this bell swell at the end of it where you're going, oh my God, will we get done? Won't we get done? But you will, you know. And not just us. Anybody that's done an animated movie has experienced the same problems with their production. The further I get back with it, the more I see the flaws in some of the animation, some of the drawings, and then in some of the drawings, scenes where they work beautifully. You know, you're not aware that the drawing isn't working right. But emotionally, I think it really has some really high moments, you know, that even male or female, you're going to feel something, you know. But I do think it plays to an older audience. I think it plays to 12 and up, you know. I'm not sure the emotional impact of this movie hits kids between ages 6 and 10.
I have a little different impression of it. I think it's a good movie, and it entertains the family very well, and it has great elements in it. Mine is just simply an artistic point of view because my brain has moved, and so there were things I would do differently today, you know, if we were making the picture again. One of my acting is really, really important to me, that the acting is believable. What happens with me, and I'm not the normal audience, but what happens with me in this movie is I'm pulled in and out of the story by the artwork. So when the artwork isn't convincing, it pulls me out of the story because it's like bad acting. And color can do the same thing to me. I love the script, and I think that the backgrounds, I think, and layouts are, for the most part, quite good.
The actress performances and the songs were very good.
And it does have an emotional impact, which I think is noteworthy. It's good. It's hard for animation to have an emotional impact. It can be slick, it can be well executed, and all that kind of thing. But after I go to an animated film, and whether it's Disney or whether it's DreamWorks or whatever it is, I can walk out of the animated film and go, yeah, because I'm not moved at all by it. If you're not moved by a movie in some way that causes you to feel a little differently, then I'm not sure whether it's really a good movie no matter how well they've put it together. Because it's like a book, reading a book. If the book that you're reading doesn't thrill you as you read the pages and you can't hardly put it down, then why would I want to read a book?
Which just makes you go back to the quote, it's all about the story.
Yeah, which we can mess up.
Agreed. Anything can mess it up long. I mean, even the projectionist could misframe it, and the audience watches the whole movie watching only 2/3 of the frame.
So it really has to do with if you, as directors, producers, artists, whatever, if you have all the way through somehow managed to make that illusion up there so complete that you buy it. You buy it, and I don't believe that's crafted. I lose that, and I lose myself in the movie. Then I think we've done a good job. There are some places in here when I do get lost in it, and there are some places when I'm kicking myself, saying, "Why did I let that happen?" It could have been better. I find if there's anything, I find that reading good books, good literature, and everything does illuminate your brain, and it gives you good ideas. I'm reminded of a really neat thing that was said in Mr. Holland's Opus, I believe it was, when they kept cutting budget because there was no room for the arts or the music or anything in there. And I think he has a line where he says, well, when you get through with your mathematicians and your scientists and everything, and he says, and they start writing their papers, they won't have anything to say because you've taken the art out of them. And art is what gives us something worth talking about to each other if we don't have that creative thing. I just know tons of people who take all of their creativity and bury it somewhere and really don't get it out. I guess they're not confident enough to think that they have something that we all need to hear, and they don't get it out, and they aren't creative. They've stopped that. They died somewhere inside. But they're really good at doing checklists. And if someone gives them a list of things to do today, they can do that. But if they have to make their own list, heaven help them.
It's interesting. It's like they're asleep. People are asleep, and they're not. There's nothing in there out there that they're trying to achieve, really soar or fly or sing or whatever you want to call it. Taking whatever you've come with and try to master it and bring something special, reach beyond what the everyday mundane things,
This has been fun. I've enjoyed being with you and sitting through this movie and understanding, what it is we actually did. And I hope everybody enjoys it, not just when they look at this DVD, but maybe you'll show it to your kids. And maybe it'll go on living for years. Who knows?
And thank you for listening all the way to the end.